But there are other things that will come in, okay, that would either increase or decrease it. For example, the reason why the freight charges may be high is if we have many independent services, that there are so many shipping lines chasing few cargoes, then you can't afford to stick to the place that you say, as for me, I'm selling it so much, you take it or leave it. Then you're not going to get the cargoes to move. It's just like when you go to the market, sometimes you see these market women, they need a lot of help in arriving at what to do. Because here, particularly in Ghana, you find out that a market woman can sit behind maybe a plantain she's brought from the hinterland selling. She would insist, because she paid so much and it has cost her so much, even when the plantains are getting rotten, she's still sitting there demanding a high price. It doesn't make for business sense, okay? So in the same way with shipping, if you are not getting the cargoes, you just have to come down with the freight so that people will bring their cargoes to you. Because the cargoes depend on the forces of supply and demand. The more ships, then it will result in the less cargo available, and therefore the less will be the freight. The more cargo and the lesser ship, then the freight will go up. So it keeps going back and forth. Okay. And another thing that has influenced the price structure is containerization, which has resulted in larger efficiency. You know, those days when we used to load the ships with individual items of cargo, I said, one, you spend so long in port. And so the ship owner would want to get his money back. So definitely the freight will be higher if he's loading some types of cargoes. But today with containerization, because of the efficiency, the larger efficiency of just lifting one container, it contains sometimes about 200 times the individual packages you would have been stacking, time consuming one after the other. Now everything is either stacked in the container itself, or it is palletized and then loaded into the container, which makes for speed. So for that reason, even though the prices would not be as those days, it is not so high. The other advantage with the containers is the fact that I'm sure you've done containers, is the efficiency of carriage. It ensures that there's less damage to the cargoes. In those days when we were doing the individual, the amount of damage was too much. Sometimes some of the stevedores deliberately damage the cargoes. They just deliberately cause bust and bags, bleeding bags, broken cases, broken boxes, and so on. And there was also a high level of pilferage. People were stealing cargoes. But now, either they are shrink wrapped and they are also further loaded in containers. To get to the container, it means you have to break in, and it's not easy. Usually, if they are carrying delicate cargoes, they will put the delicate ones or the expensive ones behind and block it with the less expensive and bulky cargo. So even when you break it, it's very difficult for you to get to the back of the cargo to do any stealing. Okay. So it has made the prices not to rise too sharply. And another thing that has helped with the prices is the economy of scales, larger ships. Formerly, ships were quite sizable, about between 100 to somewhere even about 80, 50 meters long to a maximum about 150 meters. Today, most ships that come around, even in Tema, carrying bulk cargoes typically are usually very large ships, 200 meters long, 30-something meters beam. Those days, ships were just about 80 meters beam. 30-something is almost about twice the width, and the depth is also big. So they can carry a lot of cargoes at once. And the more they can carry, the less will be the price. Okay. There was a difference between the consumption of fuel for more cargo on board and less cargo is small. So it would mean that that big ship, essentially is carrying cargoes for about 2 or 3 or 4 ships at once. So it will bring the prices, the freight rates down. So pricing in the liner shipping, you should be aware of the three main types of conference rates and the basics in freight rate setting in liner shipping. The principles and calculation methods of tariffs in container and conventional cargo liner services and the liner terms that apply. You should also be aware of the costs and surcharges that are slapped on some ships, on some cargoes. We'll look at that. And then understand the difference between a freight forwarder commission and system rebates in liner shipping. So under the liner first, the basic calculation of the ocean freight rate for liner depends on two main factors. One, the port and distance related costs, and two, the cargo related costs. What we mean by that is, which port are we looking at? All the ports do not charge the same thing. There are some ports that are very expensive, okay, for whatever reason. One can't tell, but their port rates are quite high. Like Belgium, for example, Antwerp in Belgium, their port costs are very high. Some French ports also very high. Germany also, we have some very high freight rates, port costs. Then we have the distance. So apart from the ports you are calling at, which would have to be taken into account in determining the freight rate, you also have to look at the distance you are moving the cargo. If the distance is short, then you cannot charge so much, but it depends on how long you are going to move the cargo, over what distance. So we have the port cost and the distance related cost factors. Then you have the cargo related, that is, what type of cargo is it? Is it clean cargo? Is it dirty cargo? Is it edible? Is it long? Is it big? Is it voluminous? All these things play a part in determining how much the freight will be. For the conference rates, we had three main types of rates. We had the commodity rate, the class rates, and then a combination of the two, commodity class rates. In the commodity rates, they will quote the price for individually for commodities, for several hundred commodities. So they will say that if you are shipping sugar, this is the price. Rice, this is the price. Soya beans, this is the price, and so on. Or if it is finished product, it is a manufactured product of milk or edibles, this is the price, and so on. Then the class rates, in the class rates, they grouped some of the commodities into classes. The clean, edible ones, maybe you have things like perishables, you have things like dirty cargoes, and so on. So they divided them into class depending on certain characteristics of the cargo. So you have that as a class rate. Then with the commodity class rate, the tariffs are a combination of the two. So the type of commodity and which class it belongs will determine how much the freight will be. Okay. So that is how they will look at it in the ocean freight calculation for liner. Now that the liner conferences are virtually submerged in a way, because in the 60s and especially the 70s and early 80s, they were the main types of shipping services that you encountered. So they had a very strong setup, and they drew up the tariffs, the scheduling rates, and the goods that are transported, and so on, especially on the big routes like, let's say, Bukuo, West Africa, Kowak, that is continent, West Africa, Taka, and so on. So they'll fix the rate for these ones based on either the commodity, the class, or a combination of the two. But as the years moved on, and especially with the coming into the fray of the containers, it has sort of broken down that strict rule of these class rates, commodity rates, and so on. Because when you look at the cargoes that are packed into the containers, when we are talking about the cargoes, we call the containers the cargoes. You understand? So container ships, we say that their cargoes are containers. But there are individual cargoes within the containers. So we don't look at those individual cargoes. We look at the containers and fix the rates for the containers, not the individual cargoes within the containers. So things have changed a bit. Okay. Other things that influence the tariffs are the availability of cargo, which I explained earlier on. When there's imbalance in the transportation of the cargoes, it also creates a problem. Take, for example, especially with the bulk trades, if a ship is loading oil from Saudi Arabia to Ghana, you don't expect her to discharge the oil and then load the same Ghana oil back to Saudi Arabia. You can't carry coal to Newcastle. It will not work. So those ships, when they are loading, they do, most of the time, they do just one-way voyage. Okay. So it creates some imbalance. So when it does that, when they can't get a return source of revenue, the freight tends to go up. Okay. And that is why when people ship containers to Africa, they charge sometimes twice as much as what they ship from the